old railway embankment. It's no more than about 25-30 feet above the ground down there, but it's like riding along a pontoon this time of the year. And that can also freeze over there, so it's either a sea of muddy water or it's a sheet of ice. It really does look like an inland sea from here. I'm heading out on my second wild camp of this season. You'll probably see I'm on the Bath to Bristol bicycle track, which runs along the route of the former Midland Railway from Bath Green Park that way to Bristol. You may also have noticed the thumbnail. Tonight's hot tent camp has got a theme, a haunted theme. Also going to share with you a story that I became aware of a couple of years ago, and it's connected to the location I'm going to, and it involves somebody I almost guarantee you will know. More about that later. Tonight I've got all the ingredients for corned beef hash, which is a favourite working man's meal. Easy to do, and I've got a couple of cans of Guinness. I bought some logs from Bath, but I'm also going to get to my site early, make sure it's feasible to camp there, and then look round for some fallen wood or some dead standing wood. It's near some wood, so I'm pretty sure I'll be able to do that. And I'll also explain to you why I've got a slow puncture and I cannot mend that until I get to Blackpool next week for a week's holiday. You can see it's flooded in all the fields. Like most of the UK, we had some very cold weather last week, and then all weekend it's been torrential rain. Quite strong winds today, but apart from that it's a lovely autumnal day. I'm heading no more than 10 miles from Bath, so about another 8 miles that way. It's coming up. We're still on the Bath to Bristol Railway Path, which follows the course of the Midland Railway, but the actual course of the railway, about a mile along here, has been obliterated. It's got a ring road built on top of it, so the cycle path has been diverted around it. We go over a couple of bridges and cross over the main road. I'll explain what's happening when we get there, but it's relevant to where we're heading tonight. We've now climbed up onto a bridge crossing over the road, and the course of the railway would have been down there somewhere, but we'll rejoin it over there somewhere. Can you see it's about to split here, go straight on or off to the left? And again, that's relevant to where we're heading. There's a bit more rain in the air. It's been on and off all day, just very briefly. Gosh, this is so autumnal, isn't it? All the browns and goldens and the yellows of the tree, bright blue sky. This is fantastic. So that big road is over there. Soundproof from us, but you can still hear it. And here we are, we're about to cross up. Here we are, about to climb up and cross it a second time, just round this corner, and then we'll drop back down to the path of the old railway. Here we are, second crossing. Now look at that up there. That's what I wanted to point out to you. That road off to the left is relevant to where we're heading tonight. I'll explain very shortly. And now down here, we're dropping back down. Somewhere along here, we're going to join the course of the old railway. So it will have come in from the right. Somewhere along here. Then round about here somewhere, we're back on the course of the old railway, and our destination is just around the corner. And here we are, about 100 yards in front of me. I can see it. We're coming in to the old Mangotsfield Junction, where there was a station, a big station actually. It's easy to pass through this now, just think it's a couple of overgrown old platforms, but it's not. So this is it, the old Mangotsfield Junction station. Some of the walls of the buildings survive. This was actually a big railway junction in the form of a huge triangle, so 6 platforms in all. yet it only served a very small settlement up there, Mangotsfield. It was rarely used by the locals by all accounts. It was just a very busy railway junction. I'll try and explain here why that was. That's looking back the way we've just come, where that lady's cycling. So there's one of the platforms over there, almost overgrown. There's the big middle one, veering off to the right. That would be heading towards Bath. And then this one here, this line, would have headed up to Birmingham, York and on to Newcastle, so up through the Midlands in the north. And then there would have been another island platform over there. That's heading towards Bristol. I'm not going to give you all the dates and the details, but I'll put a link to the Wikipedia page down below if you want to know the exact details. But originally, the Bristol to Yate line came along here, went up there, and there was actually a small station just round the corner a few hundred yards serving Mangotsfield village, which it would have been then. It's now more like a town. And that's up there about half a mile or so. And then when they built the extension along here to Bath Green Park, also run by the Midland Railway, they actually moved the station more this way and they built the junction here, so you can see this is like the top of a triangle. And then from the other direction there was a line coming down from that direction straight towards Bath, so it wouldn't have had to come in here and go that way, it would have gone straight down. But that no longer exists, so that's what the ring road has been built on. So you cannot see the course of the old railway. So once upon a time this really would have been a triangle. Route Bath, Bristol, Bristol up to the Midlands and beyond. Then beyond our site, on what is now the ring road, there would have been the Midlands down to Bath Green Park. And I came across a story from here a few years ago actually, and that's why I've come here to camp tonight. First of all, I'm going to go along there into the woods and see if I can find myself some wood that I may cut tonight, although there looks like there may be some up on the platform. But that's why I wanted to get here early actually, start putting my tent up at dusk. So on the platform here they've embedded some old tickets. Bath Green Park to Mangotsfield. Where does this one go? Mangotsfield to Oldland Common. There's a torn ticket here. Bath Green Park to Wickwar. There used to be some suitcases embedded in there. They looked like you could pick them up, but they were steel. They were actually concreted into the platform. I did wonder if that fallen tree would be any good, but I've just pulled some of the bark back and it's very, very wet, so I think I'm going to have to go further in the woods to find some dry wood. Trains would have either been going through here to Bristol or through here to Bath. They did stop here. People may have changed here as a hub, but I don't think many people stopped here to get off to go up to Mangotsfield, because it's about a good half a mile uphill that way. As far as I know, that all that didn't exist when this was still a railway. But somewhere underneath here is still the subway between the platforms. I don't know where it is, but I'm going to try and find that. Ridden through here so many times on the Bristol to Bath bike track. Sometimes I head up that way, up towards Yate, but it's only recently I came in here to have a look and I saw they've made it into a bit of a picnic area. And as soon as I saw that I thought, potential wild camp there, look. Not here, but beyond there a bit. That's a bit too obvious. But just beyond that there is actually some grass. I checked it out on my ride the other day actually. So you can see all the walls of what looked like a really big building. There was lots of steel canopies here actually, hundreds I think. Again, it'll be in that wiki page below. There's a big glass canopy over there here, so it was a big area to cover. I'm going to just leave my bike here and wander into those woods there. I don't really want to be wheeling that all over there. I bought a heavy duty garden waste bag or concrete rubble bag to bring back any logs I can find, then I can be cutting them over here. Okay, this is going to be my spot. You can see people walk across there, and that wall up there is where people cycle from the Bath to Bristol bike path if they want to start then heading up towards Chipping Sodbury Way, so people walk through there. There may be people here after dark, I don't know. I didn't realise there was quite as many houses nearby actually, but I'm sure if I put it there I won't be in the sight of anybody. Whether anyone comes here or not, I don't know. This would make a nice prep area, even a seat actually for later on. Been gathering dead wood over there on the hillside. That's all stuff I could break up by hand, small stuff. Then in there's some dead fallen wood. I think this would be my logs for tonight. Look, it's fairly dry. That's going to make, I would say, 6 or 7 good logs. Split them in half, 12, 14, maybe even more actually. That's going to be my main wood for tonight. I have bought stuff from Bath, so I'm going to just quickly check the time, and then I may even dig my saw out before I start putting the tent up and start at least chopping that down into logs. Here's my canvas Woods Walker stove bag. I've said this many times before, it's so big I just stuff it full with other stuff, so I'm hoping. So inside is everything. Look, there's my smoke alarm, fire starting kit, there's the axe, hoping my saw's going to be in here, there's my gloves. Right, okay, I've been and dropped a massive clanger. I thought my saw was in here, that tubular folding buck saw, but it's not. Do you know, I thought about this last night after I packed my bags, and I thought you ought to check it. Then I thought no, and I checked my box this morning just in case it was in there, but it wasn't. There's the axe. So basically all I've got to split that wood is the axe. So I don't think I'm going to have as many logs here as I hope to have, but at least I've got an hour to get them chopped down. But it's going to make a lot of noise, that's the only thing. I'm going to have to chop them slightly and then like try and break them with my foot. That's a bit of a clanger. Lesson learnt. Well, forgetting that saw wasn't a disaster, it just made hard work. So that's that big log split and chopped down just with the axe. Made a lot of noise. People watching as they were going by, looking up. A couple of people sort of said, just doing firewood, said yeah. Left a bit of residue down there. I'll kick that all in later. I think it's time to get the tent up. It must be getting off at 4 o'clock now, and it's just coming on to rain. It's now 10 past 4 and I've just got the tent up. Starting to lose the light a bit now. It's got my bike pegged out. I cut all the wood up. I managed to rescue the situation by forgetting the buck saw. I just had to chop it down. It's hard work, but I got it done. I've got some decent logs actually. I was able to just skim off all the bark off it, and then I think that'll actually burn later on. The tent's not the best pitch I've ever done. It's okay on the left hand side, that right hand side needs sorted. It was just coming on to rain as I started putting the tent up. That's why I rolled the flap down. Said this before, that's where the stove jack goes on, velcros on, or you can use it as conventional tent. I just pulled that down really to stop the rain getting in. Right, need to sort out that side. I think I can see what the problem is, and then start getting everything in, and then get the wood burner made up before it gets dark. Probably got about another half an hour, I think 20 minutes of light, so I need to put the camera away, get a move on. Well, it's 1 minute to 5 and I'm pretty much set up. I'm still in my cycling kit. I've got the stove made up, the pipes as straight as it's going to be. I'm happy with that. Sealed the stove jack hole to keep any rain out, because it's just coming on to rain. It's actually that nice cosy feeling of rain pitter pattering on the outside of the tent. It's only a single skin tent, as I said before, though I've actually got an inner which takes up half of the octagon. I've just locked my bike up and put a bungee down to make up tripwire. I think I might put a bag over the saddle, then I'm going to dive in and get the stove lit. I will put more light on shortly. It's about 20 past 5 now. I've got the tent up, got the stove all made up, flew up through the stove jack, just pulled the door to, because just after I got the tent up it started pitter pattering with rain. It's been on and off all day. I wouldn't mind if it did rain tonight actually, but I do intend to go out and have a wander around the station later on. There's an information board up there actually, we'll go along and have a look at that. Then I'm going to try and find this subway underneath the platforms. I know it exists because I saw someone walking under it on a video on YouTube recently. I had no idea there was one here, so where it is I've no idea. I may even have to ask somebody. I didn't realise till I started chopping that wood how local this is between housing estates. People use this as a cut through from that housing estate up to the road. I've never really clocked that before as I've been cycling through. Once again, you know, when you come to explore somewhere, you see things in a different light. So there were some dog walkers earlier on and children cutting through here on the way home from school. I can hear the ring road in the distance. I'm hoping it's going to quieten down later on. To be honest, I don't really care. I just hope I don't get disturbed here tonight, but I wouldn't have thought anybody's going to be out mooching around on a night like this, but who knows. I've got the stove all ready. I've got all my wood from home there. I've got a whole bag of that wood I cut earlier on, so I'm going to be burning that as well. You can see when I split that wood with the axe, it's still got the bark on, but it's very dry inside. But I will just take all the dampness out of that, so I'll be lighting that shortly. That's all the logs I bought from Bath. That's all dried stuff. I just took my axe up and battened some of it, so I've got all these small pieces to start it off. There's my fire lighting kit. There's the first batch of what I cut this afternoon in the wood dryer to try and get it dry, and that's everything else I've got. Don't know if you can see, there's quite a bit in there, so hopefully that's going to keep me going this evening. And if you can see in there, I've put a log on the left and the right and then crossed it with some of the battened wood. I'll start the fire shortly with that. I'm not going to film that. And then I'll just feed these bits of battened wood in and start putting the other stuff in. The quicker I can start getting that dry, the better really, because that should keep me going all evening. Anyway, fire time. Well, I've lit the stove. I've actually put on one of the damp logs just to see how it'll burn with a good log, whether I can mix and match or whether I really do have to dry these out. As you can see, it's not too bad, but there's just dampness in there. So the quicker I can get some heat in there and get all that dry, the better. You may hear pouring down with the rain. I really like that. I love the sound of that rain, just literally a fraction of a millimetre the other side of that nylon. It's harsh out there, dark, cold, wet. I'm in here with my cosy stove. So just keeping my eye on that log to see if the wood I cut this afternoon will burn without being dried. This is a bit of an experiment. Okay, I'm ready to start cooking. So I'm doing corned beef hash. There's the corned beef. Chop and dice the onion and fry that. Before that, I'm going to peel the potatoes, cut them into about quarters, boil them for 6 or 7 minutes, and then cut them into small cubes and then fry those with the onion, and then add the corned beef. Put the beans in near the end. Got some ketchup, got some oil. There's my knife, potato peeler. I think that's everything ready. Got some water on ready to start boiling. Once that starts picking up a little bit, things are moving now. I'm really starting to get this wood dry. I've just already dried some of those logs. They're really hot and starting to smoke. Potatoes are boiling, as you can see. Give them about 7 minutes in there, drain them off. Then I'll mix them in with the onions and fry them, and then chop up that and add that in with some beans. I've got a couple of cans of Guinness, which I'm really looking forward to. So at the moment, I'm just using the wood burner to dry as much of this as possible. Once the cooking's done, that's all the top will be used for. It's so hot in here already. Just hear the roar of the traffic out there. We'll go for a wander later on, but that's quite haunting behind the tent actually, because those windows with the partial frames in are all lit up because there's some lights over the other side. We'll go for a walk later on. The heat's building up in the tent again, so I've got the corned beef chopped up in with the potatoes and the onions, and I've just put a little bit of ketchup in. I don't use Worcester sauce. I'm a working lad for tomato ketchup, and I've got some beans as well to go with it. And then the priority is, as soon as I've cooked that, decant it onto a plate, because I don't think I'll eat all that in one go. Keep the rest if I need some later on, and then start getting that wood back on, because I'm rapidly getting through the wood that I bought, if that makes sense. Just making sure the tent's going to be nowhere near the wood burner. I've got my shoes and my socks drying over there. About another few minutes until that starts to brown and harden on the bottom. Try and flip it over without breaking it up too much. The beans will be ready, then literally take it off. and get as much wood on as possible, and then start heating up some water for the washing. Just on my first can of Guinness, then I'll have the second one later on. It's a lovely sound, isn't it? Smell of cooking food, the heat on my cheeks, and the sound of that rain out there. It's a real winter's evening by the sound of it out there. I think the corned beef hash is almost ready. So much heat around that pipe, I'm trying to turn it so all the meat's really hot when I eat it. The beans have heated up. I'll be dishing up shortly, putting the cold water on to boil, and then getting all that wood back on to try and dry it out, so I've got plenty of heat for later on this evening. Okay, let battle commence. Corned beef hash with beans. There's a little bit left there, I'm still hungry. Got the hot water on, and you can see all the logs on. Now, I've just had to get into a t-shirt, it's so hot in here, so I'm going to tuck into my tea. I'll wait until I've done all the washing up before I have my second beer. I'll say bon appetit. Just had my meal in there. The wood burners keeping the tent really warm. I've just popped out for a few minutes in between showers. It's either wet or it's blustery. This is the remains of the old Mangotsfield station. It used to be a very busy junction once upon a time. Apparently it's never busy with local passengers, but it was a very, very busy rail junction. And I came across a story a few years ago which I wanted to share with you, and it inspired this trip actually. Lots of runners going by. As you can see, I'll try not to dazzle them. So there used to be 6 platform islands here. Pardon me, there used to be 3 platform islands here. So there was a total of 6 platforms. It was very busy in its heyday. Anyway, the story goes, a gentleman who was born and raised near Bath, you would almost certainly know who I'm talking about, was actually at Bristol University, and in 1914, at the outbreak of the First World War, he tried to enlist into the army, but because he was a keen rugby player, he was carrying a foot injury and he was rejected as not being fit enough. So he went back to his studies. Then a year later, when Kitchener's volunteer army was being recruited, he tried to enlist again, and this time, because of the losses in France, they just couldn't be as fussy, so they accepted him. And he ended up being stationed in France after his training. He actually fought in the Battle of the Somme. He went over the top, and his unit reached some enemy trenches, and there was really vicious close quarter combat, and he was smashed over the head with a rifle butt, and the only thing that saved his life was the recently introduced steel helmets, but it was an injury which plagued him the rest of his life. When he was on the ground, he deflected a bayonet thrust to his chest, but it just simply went in his groin, injured him even further. Then a third bayonet thrust he deflected with his left hand, and it pretty much made his left hand crippled and semi-useless for the rest of his life. He was taken back to England and medically discharged, finished his studies, and he'd always fancied being an actor, but his injuries just meant that was no longer possible. So as an alternative, he thought he may have a go at script writing. So he felt all he needed was a good idea. And the story goes, in 1923, I believe, he actually missed his connection and spent the night here, as I'm doing tonight. And it was very busy in its heyday, and he thought he heard a train coming and actually passed through the station, although it never did. And it was freak acoustics because we're set in quite a dip here, surrounded by hills. And so it gave him the inspiration he was looking for. He wrote a play called The Ghost Train, and it's very successful on the stage, apparently, and it was made into 3 films as well. And the third of those films, 1941, starring Arthur Ashe, you can still watch that on YouTube for nothing. Then at the outbreak of the Second World War, he enlisted again, and this time they accepted him, and he was commissioned as an officer, and he went over to France, and then he was one of the last soldiers to escape from Belgium. He got one of the last ships out from Boulogne, And then he came back to England. Again, he's medically discharged because of his previous injuries. Then he joined the Home Guard. And then he eventually finished the war with ENSA, the entertainments unit for the forces, because of his script writing and some of the acting he'd managed to do. And then in 1968 he got his big break on British television. He got the part of Mr. Godfrey in Dad's Army. I'm talking about Arnold Ridley, of course. So next time you watch an episode of Dad's Army and you see that dithery old Mr. Godfrey with his sister Dolly's upside down cakes and his constant needing to be excused, just remember he really, really was a true war hero in both wars. If ever there's a case for don't judge a book by its cover, I think Arnold Ridley is a perfect example. And I also read that the scriptwriters were not keen on having him at first because of his age and his injuries, and so the part of the first aider had to be written specially for him because he couldn't carry a rifle for long periods. You will see him carrying a rifle on the end credits, but very rarely you'll see him carrying a rifle in the rest of the episodes. That's because he was the first aider, because his injury from the First World War meant he wasn't able to carry a rifle. And the story doesn't quite end there. I've got a slight connection as well, little anecdote to share. In 1976, that really long hot summer, I'd only just left school and I was working in a clothes shop in Bath, Foster Menswear. And I was walking home one evening through Kingsmead Square and I just saw these three old gents, you know, like last of the summer rain, just sat on a bench. And it's three from Dad's Army. It was John Le Mesurier, Sergeant Wilson, Mr. Godfrey, Arnold Ridley, and I cannot for the life of me remember who the third one was. Possibly Private Fraser or Corporal Jones. I just cannot remember the third, but I definitely saw John Le Mesurier and Arnold Ridley, so that was a magic moment. And I realised later on they were on tour with Dad's Army. They were probably waiting to go on stage that evening at Theatre Royal, just sat round enjoying a lovely summer evening. And so that was the story of Arnold Ridley, and that's why I wanted to come here and spend the night here at this haunted place. Do you know what? There's a fast flowing stream down there. I never knew that. Been along here so many times on my bike, just from that section of the track onto the main Bath to Bristol track. I never realised there was a stream down there. That's looking through one of the windows. Look, my bike over there. And this brings you out onto the platform of the Bath to Bristol. I'm going to have a wander around here all tomorrow, because I know I've seen on someone's video from a couple of years ago there was an old underground subway that you can still walk underneath. So that's heading towards Bath. That's where we came in. There's the Ring Road path that way. Never really been down there, so I ought to go and have a look. So that would have been the platform going towards Bristol. That would have been the platform coming from Bristol towards Bath that way. I wonder which part of the station he stayed in overnight. If he was here overnight, if he's anything like me, he'd been wandering all around. Hard to imagine this was once a busy junction. So here's another part of the remains of the wall. So we're behind there in that picnic site. Gosh, just hear the overpowering roar of the Ring Road. Here we are back on the Midlands Island platform going that way. Said Mangotsfield, you won't see it here but it's very dark. There's a big hill up there and it's that way about half a mile or so, And somewhere near here was that chocolate factory. You'll have seen it on the pictures. Quite an imposing looking brick building. So the chocolate factory bowl, my bearings, looking at old photographs, it's no longer there. It's over that way a bit. But there was lots of sidings going into it. And I'm guessing that's what Arnold Ridley heard. Some parallel nighttime trains doing some shunting. And he thought it was a train coming. Such a big place, it'd be easy to think there was a train coming actually on either this or one of the fire platforms. Right, I'm going to head back to my tent, all lit up there. Oh, a lot of smoke coming out, the fire must have taken. I'm just going to get myself sorted, fill the water bottles up from my water cell, so I've got plenty of water for the night. Very haunting, isn't it? I've just come back to a very, very hot tent. It was a bit smoky. Can you see all those logs I'd left on top starting to burn? I've just had to open the door to let some of that smoke out. Give it a couple of minutes, but it's really, really hot in here, which is exactly what I wanted just before going to bed. Just been out wandering around taking some photographs. It's absolutely really magical and mystical out there. So nice to come back to that though. I'll turn the light off, give you an idea of how nice it is. Look at that. Right, another 30 seconds with the door open just to get rid of that smoke. And then I'm going to put the last of those logs on, lie back, think about going to bed. Well, I've put all of the wood on now, so it really is fired up. And that's all of that stuff that I cut this afternoon, which was dry but a little bit damp. And there's rain coming down on the tent, so what a lovely sort of way to finish the evening. I'm just going to turn the light off, I think. Just get the light turned off. I'm just going to lie here and think about Mr. Godfrey, Arnold Ridley, 101 years ago. He thought he heard a train come through at night and there wasn't one. Imagine that. Can you hear the rain on the outside of the tent? So nice being in this. This is the warmest I've been all night. I'll say good night. I'm so glad this has happened actually. The wood's really dried out, pumping out a heck of a lot of heat. I've got all my socks and my shoes drying by the fire, so that'll all be dried by the morning. Lovely orangey glow of the fire, still giving out a lot of heat. I'm just about to get in my sleeping bag, do this spinning tent up, and can you hear the rain on the outside of the tent? Going to go to sleep listening to that. I'll say good night. See you in the morning.